Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Jack Hagel. State lawmakers returned to Raleigh this week for another scheduled check-in after failing to pass a budget on time earlier this summer. Lawmakers are expected to introduce a bill with a number of proposed law enforcement and judicial reforms, and they could consider funding for health care, economic development, and more. WRAL state government reporter Will Doran plans to cover all of the legislative action, and he joins us today. Quick note on that, though. Legislative proposals have been batted back and forth in recent days, so be sure to check out the NC Capitol section of WRAL.com for any updates. Will, good to see you.
You too.
One of the more high-profile things we're going to be watching for this week is a possible crime bill. What are lawmakers planning with that, and why now?
Well, the bill is going to be named Ireina's Law after Ireina Zarutska, who was tragically stabbed to death in Charlotte last month. And lawmakers have said that they want to make a number of changes based on her killing and especially the background of her alleged killer in that case. And they've rolled out a few details. We covered some of those previously. A lot of the attention in this has focused on magistrates and bail reform. The man who police say killed her had been arrested earlier this year for a fairly minor offense and was let out with no bail, had to pay $0 to get out. And a lot of people have a lot of problems with that. He also allegedly has a history of mental health problems. There's been a lot of attention, from really both sides of the aisle on changing some rules around mental health in the state as well, and involuntary commitments, things like that. So the details are, starting to filter out. But Monday morning is when we expect lawmakers to sit down, formally roll this out, and go through everything that they are planning to put in this. But it's going to be very wide-ranging. Bail reform, mental health, possible death penalty issues in there as well. So a lot to unpack.
Now, Republicans control the legislature, and Republicans are going to be the ones issuing this bill. But Democrats have also been very vocal about what they want to see. What do they want?
Yes. Well, it even depends on which Democrat you talk to, because, like I said, there are a whole lot of issues here on both the criminal law side, the mental health side, just other aspects of how do we, stop and address the root causes of crime and poverty and mental health before it escalates into murder. And so there are a whole lot of things. One thing that everyone seems to agree on is addressing mental health, and exactly how that happens. The Democrats want more funding for mental health. Governor Josh Stein came out and said that he also thinks that there should be some cases in which we make it easier to commit people to mental hospitals against their will to get treatment, especially if they're violent and have a history of psychosis. I think that's something that a lot of Republicans agree with as well. Probably going to see something along those lines in this bill. There could be a little bit of disagreement on some of the bail issues and the pretrial, because, of course, when someone's just arrested and goes to jail for the first time, you are innocent until proven guilty. So, how much of a crackdown in that part of the justice system different politicians want to see might break down along party lines. But we're just going to have to wait and see on some of that. But definitely, more funding for mental health is something Democrats have been talking about. More funding for police officers, too. That's something that the governor raised and said that, look, Republicans need to go ahead and pass a budget because that will get more funding, at least for state law enforcement officers like the SBI, the Highway Patrol, things like that.
So it sounds like there is some bipartisan agreement. Is there any chance they will actually come to an agreement on a bill? Is there going to be too much stuff that Democrats don't agree with to get this thing through?
Well, the math in the legislature this year is that Republicans in the Senate don't need any Democrats on board. They already have the veto-proof supermajority, and Republicans in the House only need one Democrat to flip if the governor vetoes something. But it's not even guaranteed that the governor is going to veto anything. Like I said, Governor Stein just several days ago, last week, came out with some of his proposals for this kind of a bill. So he's, of the mind that he agrees something should be done. But even if it gets to the point where he might veto it because of X, Y, and Z, more partisan things that get added in, Republicans do only need one Democrat, and especially on something as high profile and emotional as this, I would imagine they will be able to find one, and probably more than one, especially if they are willing to work with Democrats. The leader in the House, the Democratic leader in the House, Robert Reeves, has put out a list of what he wants to see in this bill, and Republicans have already said that he's not going to get everything he wants on that list because one of them was red flag laws for people with guns and mental issues. Republicans are not going to touch that. But he has some other things that he asked for that could be included in here. So again, we're going to have to wait and see when this is rolled out Monday morning.
Well, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll hear about proposals for healthcare and possible proposals for economic development. Stick around. Welcome back to the WRAL Daily Download. We're talking with WRAL State Government reporter Will Doran about upcoming legislative action. Will, lawmakers also are in talks about Medicaid funding. Where are things with that?
Yes, things are complicated with that, but this all goes back to the fact that we don't have a state budget right now. What we do have is a mini budget that the legislature passed back in July to kind of take care of some baseline problems they needed to address. Changing funding levels for universities based on new enrollment and doing what they call Medicaid rebase, which just basically acknowledging the state's growth in total population and people on Medicaid and adding some more money in there. They put about $600 million in back in July. It looks like that was not enough money. There's some disagreement on exactly how much money should be enough. And so we're going to hear that disagreement plenty this week. I think a lot of those debates are still happening between Republicans in the House and Republicans in the Senate, and then also Democratic Governor Josh Stein's administration. So we're going to see where that comes down on. But there does seem to be some sort of desire to address that. But tied up in all of that, too, is the Children's Hospital Project. This is a partnership between UNC and Duke that the state legislature has also agreed to fund. But since they agreed to fund it back in 2023, there have been a divergence of opinions on where to go next. This is going to be a multi-billion-dollar project in the end. The legislature originally agreed to put about $300+ million into it. The Senate wants to really boost that up, another $500 million. The House actually wants to ratchet it down and take back $100 million that they already promised. And so they're really far apart on that. And the deal over, how are we going to address the Children's Hospital funding in the future, we're hearing could also get caught up in this whole Medicaid rebase thing. There could be just sort of a broad, overarching healthcare bill that they talk about.
Now, what happens if they can't reach an agreement on the funding either for Medicaid or the hospital?
Well, the hospital could keep marching forward. This is going to be a years-long project. Like I said, multiple billions of dollars that UNC and Duke are putting in. So, the difference in, does the state legislature do, $300 million or $200 million or $500 million or $800 million, that might not make a huge difference in the end. There seems to be a lot of desire to move forward with it anyways. But hard to say right now. We do need to wait and see how that goes. But again, this is going to be something that happens over the course of probably a decade. On Medicaid, there's, again, broad disagreement on what happens if they can't approve this funding. Some people in the legislature think they've already given enough money. Some people don't. DHHS doesn't think they've given enough, and they've actually started telling providers that, hey, you might need to start cutting Medicaid reimbursements if the legislature can't get a hold of this. So, could be some cuts to hospitals and doctors coming, but maybe not. We'll see. Again, lots of disagreement. That really seems to be the theme of the legislature this year. Even within the Republican Party, lots of disagreement between the House and the Senate on some very big issues.
Now, we're also hearing some rumblings of possible economic development provisions. And what are we hearing there?
Yeah, well, these things are always highly secretive. So, details only ever trickle out barely if they make it out at all before a public announcement. But, we're hearing some very preliminary numbers, potentially millions of dollars for infrastructure for some sort of sports arena in the state. And, you look around the state, obviously the Lenovo Center here in Raleigh is an arena, but there's also projects like Carolina North at Chapel Hill that they've been working on for decades, which could be a new home of the Dean Dome. There's a project out in Asheville. UNC Asheville is trying to build a new soccer stadium in partnership basically with professional soccer out there. They actually got approval just this summer from the UNC Board of Governors to go forward with that. So there are these projects, and there could be others that we don't even know about or that don't really exist yet, but that might need some state funding to exist. So, possible exciting news for sports fans. But like I said, this we don't really know yet, and it's possible that this could be shelved entirely. We're just going to have to wait and see.
Now, all of this talk, as you mentioned earlier, comes as lawmakers in both chambers are sort of sparring over the overall state budget. Do you have any sense of whether or not we're ever going to come to an agreement between those chambers on a full spending plan, one that includes those raises for teachers and state employees?
Talking with Republican sources, they have made the point that this crime bill that they're coming back to talk about is really the only thing that they agree on right now. And so there's going to be a whole lot of, high-fiving over this crime bill, and then they're going to just go right back to fighting. Now, maybe some tensions will be eased a little bit by being able to get some sort of deal passed, but they're just so far apart right now on the budget. And, there's financial reasons for that. There's political reasons for that. Several months ago, when the session was really winding down, reporters were speaking with House Speaker Destin Hall, and he kind of moved the goalposts and, essentially indicated that he did think a budget would come in the biennium, which is the phrase for a 2-year period, which indicates, not 2025, but hopefully by 2026 they'll have something. So, state employees often have seen their raises be made retroactive when budgets are really delayed and late. That's not a guarantee, so people might miss out on several months or a year of raises, or those might be made retroactive. Same with tax cuts, things like that. Again, just have to wait and see.
Going to be a very busy and interesting week. Thanks, Will.
Yes, it will. Thank you.
That's WRAL state government reporter Will Doran. For his coverage of the legislature, go to the NC Capitol section of WRAL.com. I'm Jack Hagel. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for listening to the WRAL Daily Download and for making us part of your morning routine. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. It's a daily email with Triangle news, events, and headlines to help you get ready for the day. Sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.